Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RPG Radio. My name is Winback and on today's episode I've got some exciting news. The developers over at Crate Entertainment have announced the third expansion for Grimdawn, the Fangs of Asterkarn. This game is going to be releasing in 2024, so we're going to talk about that because there is quite a bit to be excited about when it comes to this game. Now this video is obviously just going to be an info dump based on everything that they've given us so far, but if you are in even the slightest bit of action RPG fatigue with your PoEs, your Diablo 4s, maybe even your last epochs, now is definitely the time to get into Grimdawn, because with this big update on the horizon, there is a lot that you can learn, a lot that you can love about this game, while it's taken the time to give you something new. So if you've never played it all, there are a couple beginner's guides on the channel that you can check out and I'll link down below, but let's focus on what is just over the horizon. So first off, we will be going westward on the map of Cairn to meet the Kern people. These are apparently a nomadic group of people being driven east towards renewed conflict. This is all coming from the Crate Entertainment post, which is down below, so feel free to check that out for yourself if you don't want to hear my beautiful voice drone on about it. But lore is huge for Grimdawn. If you play this game, you likely have some idea of what's going on in the background because the atmospheric storytelling of this game is fantastic. It's almost From Software, Dark Souls, Armored Core version of storytelling in a Western RPG, and it's really interesting. So if you haven't looked into the lore at all for Grimdawn, if you're just starting out, or maybe if you've been playing for a while, you haven't given any of that stuff a look, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic storytelling with a lot of the stuff going on in the background. But let's get back to the point. We're just going to go down the list of bullet points on the roadmap here with as many details as we can get from the blog post over on Crate Entertainment and see what they have in store for us. So, with that being said, let's start with the Conquer the Ascendant game mode. The lack of punctuation on these kind of hurts me a little bit when it comes to reading, but I think I got it, so hopefully I don't need any more than 6 takes to get this right. Now, the tiny blurb that they left on the blog post about Conquer the Ascendant is, quote-unquote, turn the campaign world into a challenge worthy of Ascendant demigods, with every dungeon and boss encounter sure to test your limits. This makes it seem like another difficulty up from ultimate difficulty. I could be wrong. I could be thinking about it in a different way. Maybe this is something akin to Nightmare Dungeons or Uber bosses just being new and bigger and having a new spin on all of the current campaign or, world events. But from what it sounds like, it may just be as simple as pumping up the difficulty even further. I hope it's not as simple as that. I hope it's the second thing that I'm thinking about, but we'll find out. Next on the list, and probably most excitingly, is another mastery, another subclass, another class for the game itself. You'll remember in Forgotten Gods we only got one, which was the Oathkeeper. So with Fangs of Asterkarn, we'll also only get a single mastery, at least for now, as far as we know, in the Berserker. The blog post itself says, quote, become a frenzied force of destruction upon the battlefield capable of shape-shifting into vicious beast-like forms. The new Berserker mastery brings the total number of mastery combinations to an astounding 45. So this seems to be some sort of combination between, for those of you familiar with Diablo 4, a barbarian and a druid. Shapeshifting isn't something that we usually see in Grimdawn. We don't have a lot of model changing when it comes to the characters in our game. So this is actually really fascinating, something really cool to think about, and how it's going to work with all of the other classes is even more mind-blowing, because this is in and of itself another 10 classes just to try out, just to see what works and experiment with. This is the whole reason that expansions are awesome in Grimdawn. But again, coming from the blog post, quote, "You'll trek across the glorious snowy peaks of Asterkarn, delve into frozen caverns, and explore ancient forest valleys and breathtaking hot springs as you seek to purge the corruption tainting this idyllic landscape. Parley with the Kern tribes and aid them in rekindling old alliances as you contend with the darker side of their bloody history." And obviously this is going to be a new faction that you'll be able to gain renown with. You'll have access to their quartermaster for their specific gear, weaponry, which is new transmogs, which is new cool stuff to deck your character out in. Obviously, visuals are a big part of making your character your own, making them look and feel unique to you. So anytime a new class gets added, new transmogs get added, new factions are going to add new transmogs of their own too, and that is fantastic, fantastic news. Now the next thing on the list is potion customization and affix transmutation. These two things right out of the gate should grab you as an action RPG player as endgame mechanics. This type of thing was not possible in Grimdawn prior to this expansion, and because of that, it looks like they are adding new mechanics for players to engage with in the game. I'm going to specifically look at the blog post here because, quote, is there going to be an increased level cap for this expansion? And their reply is, Fangs of Asterkarn does not increase the level cap. Your characters will instead gain additional power through quest rewards and potion customization. So basically, Crate is saying that you are going to continue gaining power as a player through this new potion customization and affix transmutation system. Also, when they say quest rewards, they mean like getting skill points or attribute points through the opportunity of completing different quests in the new regions. So you'll be able to pick up new points there. They also said that the devotion cap will not be increasing, so you will not be getting more devotion points this time around. But yeah, basically that is the quest rewards portion of it. There may be something that they reveal later on about that if it gets more involved, but for now you can just think of it like you do as quest currently, and that you might get an attribute point or a skill point here and there for completing different quests in this part of the game. According to the blog post, potion customization is going to alter your potions to suit your playstyle. Turn them into powerful tonics that restore your character's vitality, or have them provide powerful, unique buff and effects. Now, what that sounds to me like is that they are going to, in some way, take our current tincture, elixir, other potion system going on in the background, and hopefully roll that all into one potion that you'll be able to carry around with you all the time. The tedium of elixir and potion crafting in Grimdawn is probably one of the few things that I don't super enjoy about it, because you just right click, you get a whole bunch of whatever buffs are coming out of the potion. But if you have the ability to make that a permanent part of your character and adjust it as you see fit, rather than have it on maybe a particular cooldown or have it as an inventory slot, which doesn't feel great, making it, again, a permanent part of your character sounds much more unique to building what you want and filling out that character fantasy in the way that you best enjoy. And now the other component of that, or of these two systems that will inevitably buff your character past your level cap, at least in terms of power, is affix transmutation. Now this is probably no surprise to anyone that's ever played an action RPG, especially if you played in something like Diablo, but affix transmutation is re-rolling your rare and magic items to get new affixes or suffixes, or the things that give those items their particular benefits. So your molten affix is going to give your weapon some sort of fire damage buff. But you get where I'm going. If it says fire in the affix, you're going to get some sort of fire buff on the weapon, but maybe you want to transmute that to cold. Maybe you want to get cold damage or frostburn damage you'll be able to re-roll that essentially and gamble on the outcome. You're gambling the amount of the stat that will roll out and the type of stat that will roll out. So you may get a maximum roll for damage of the particular elemental variety that you're looking for. That's just how it works in Diablo. Obviously, I'm using that as a reference, but if it is anything like that, it should be fairly straightforward, and there's probably a vendor that's going to do that for you. It'll be cool if they have their own spin to it. Obviously, some of the affixes and suffixes in Grim Dawn are themselves quite unique to how the game functions in contrast to other action RPGs, but time will tell, I suppose. Now, the Crucible Expanded is obviously only for all those people who picked up the Crucible DLC, but considering how cheap the Crucible DLC is, it is almost unthinkable not to have it if you're playing Grim Dawn, because it is an incredibly fun game mode, and they are going to be adding, it looks like, 30 additional waves to the Crucible. So if you have made it to the upper echelons of this game mode, you're going to get even more to do after everything is done. So that's nothing but positive, and there's really not a whole lot much to talk about. In the same vein, the Shattered Realm is also getting some pretty basic buffs. It sounds basic at a surface level. Obviously, you're going to get new regions and new boss arenas in the Shattered Realm itself, but those will ultimately be new because there will be new encounters, new enemies, new bosses in the game, which will be added to the Shattered Realm for you to experience in that single endgame system. So basically, when we get new models, we get new stuff out in the game, the more density that we're going to get in the Crucible and the Shattered Realm, because obviously they are seeding off of all of the assets in the campaign and the overworld itself. So essentially they're getting bigger, scarier, full of more things to do. So that in and of itself is awesome, and even though it sounds pretty basic at a surface level, it's probably hours upon hours upon hours of new content to farm. This next one is just as exciting to me as the new class, because this is really the reason that everybody plays action RPGs. It's the new gear. We're getting hundreds of new items. A veritable vault of treasures awaits you with hundreds of new monster infrequents, epic items, and unique legendary items. Quoting the blog post from Crate themselves. That is absolutely fantastic news, because really items drive your character changes, they drive the build. Your build can be as unique as you want it to be on its own, but if it doesn't have the gear to change it even further, things can feel kind of stale. Now, the next thing on the list also applies to items, and it sounds like, just from the description in the blog post here, that epic items are going to be given the ability to be much better than they are. So, awaken epic items. Unleash the true potential of many epic items to turn them into more powerful implements worthy of legends. That, to me, says that you are going to be able to take an epic item to a vendor or somewhere in the world and upgrade it in some way that will make it equivalent to a legendary item. Legendary items, obviously the purple items in this game, are where a lot of the biggest stats, the biggest ability changes, they're going to be the driving force of a lot of the end game builds, and this is something that I really am happy to hear, because a lot of the epic items are really cool in their own right, but they don't have quite as much staying power as the legendary items or the set items do in the end game. So a lot of the times you have to, get rid of your blue items in order to fit the slot with a purple item, and that feels bad. But from what I'm understanding now, I may in fact get to make a new slugger build, and I could not be more excited about that fact. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the new region of the game means new factions. There's going to be a good one, which is presumably our Kern, which are the shape-shifting Berserker class that we're going to be playing, obviously, and the antithesis to them, which will likely be the new monster class. From what I can read here, it doesn't sound like I can really make a distinction on whether or not you're going to pick and choose those, like you will with the Kaiman's Chosen and Death's Vigil, but there are also a number of other things beyond those factions coming to Grimdawn. Like I mentioned earlier, new enemies obviously will be added to the game, and that is from the blog post, test your mettle against new super bosses and additional nemesis bosses for old factions. 5 new hero monster archetypes populate the entirety of Cairn alongside older additions. New super bosses is big bosses like your Mogdrogan, your clones of Bourbon, those type of things, and they'll likely be tied directly to the story that you'll get with the new faction of people out in that location of Cairn. So keep your eyes out for big godly enemies or characters. Enemies and characters? People that you can interact with that seem like they are from way beyond this realm of thinking may end up being super bosses. The other cool thing in that sentence was additional nemesis bosses for old factions. So not only are we getting a brand new faction with its own nemesis boss, we're getting just additions to the old guys. So nemesis bosses are an endgame mechanic for really good farming, and having more of them means more fun because they are incredibly challenging and require you to do different things with different builds to hunt down specific items that only they can drop. Nemesis bosses are fantastic, and it's amazing that Grimdawn has them because things like Diablo and Diablo 4 don't have anything I would consider similar. PoE takes it a step further. Well, no, because your super bosses and your pinnacle bosses in PoE are kind of the same vein. So if you're playing PoE, you'll be right at home with all the new stuff coming in Grimdawn. On top of that, though, we're also getting 2 new roguelike dungeons. And the roguelike dungeons, if you don't remember, they require a skeleton key to get into, typically give you access somewhere in the game. After completing one dungeon, you get access to a new gate, which then lets you get into the roguelike dungeon. Things like Port Valkyrie, the Steps of Torment, those type of things. But they will be coming along with free content updates for Fangs of Asterkarn, and that, in and of itself, is even more to be excited about, because the expansion is not going to be the end. It looks like there will be plenty more free content updates with the game. That is all that I have for you guys today as far as the new expansion goes. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're just excited as I am for this upcoming expansion to the game that we all know and love, or the game that maybe we will be getting into because of this exciting news. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. All of these changes sound really, really fun to me, but maybe I'm overthinking it or underthinking it, and there are issues or concerns that some people have. Let me know, and in the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out. I will catch you all next time. Peace out.